Hello, Sean Jones. It's great to have you. You are a latecomer to this Pet Industry Rising Summit, and it's a real pleasure that you signed up. You are a real entrepreneur at heart. You had a lot of business ventures. I think you're 10 years, a decade, I think, in this industry. Why don't you introduce yourself quickly?
First of all, thank you for having me. And my name is Sean Jones, and I am the co-founder. My wife and I are the co-founders of What's in the Bowl Enterprises, which is an independent neighborhood pet store in Wisconsin. And then we also founded a company called Foodynamics, which we were just recently acquired by Glacial Freeze Dry. And it's been an amazing journey, and I'm anxious to hear some of the questions that you have.
Yeah, sure. Tell me a bit about the company you that was just acquired.
So we started freeze drying with tabletop units in the back room of one of our pet stores, and that really quickly gained traction, and we quickly created an off-site commercial certified kitchen, and we were making it for our stores, selling it to our customers. And then we had a few brands that were very interested in what we were doing, and we started doing research and development for brands and private labeling for a few brands, and that grew really within 5 years, grew to private labeling for over 400 companies.
Wow. So no more kitchen table, right? So you had to build.
Correct. So we, in 2023, we purchased our first commercial freeze dryer, and it was, very challenging because it was my wife and I funding, and there aren't many freeze drying companies at the scale that we are at that have funded it themselves.
No, exactly. So lots of I call it growing pains, right? It's a great pain to have, but it's very painful.
Very painful. And I don't know if we coined the actual term, but we call it guerrilla bootstrapping.
Yeah.
Other than our freeze dryer, our dishwasher, and one of our dicers, everything was either bought at an auction site or bought used. And there's a lot of equity.
Yeah, totally. So how did you get into freeze drying? Was that something where you saw a trend, or how did you pick up on that specific, modality?
That's a really good question, because one of the things that we struggled with even before we opened our stores was, and we've been lifelong advocates of feeding real food to our dogs. My grandparents and my parents never fed dog food or cat food to our cats and dogs. And we had always struggled with, how do you make that same quality food shelf stable? And we were aware of freeze drying. And I think when the first residential or home freeze dryers came on the market, we were just really excited about it. And we tried it out, and we thought, wow, we could sell these in our stores. And we really didn't have an intention of going to the commercial level. But it was like, this is the world's perfect food preservation method. And it was just almost a whim in the beginning. And there was really no strategy behind it until we were selling more of our own product in our store than we were any other brand.
That's amazing. It's amazing. So where do you see it going? Because now we see a lot of fresh food coming up, right? So there's lots of fresh food. Either it's frozen, it's fresh, or it's vacuum sealed. How do you see that tendency evolving?
I've been at some professional conferences lately, and I don't think the big pet brands are really realizing that what this trend could possibly mean. But I think they are aware that the kibble food and canned food sales are going to decline, even though they're doubling down on building factories that produce those products. I really do believe that we're in the era of the 2.0 pet parent, where people are becoming very educated. And I think they're very overwhelmed too. If you take a standard, the traditional buyer's journey, it's very confusing in the marketplace, but I think people are able to filter it out. And we're certainly seeing a lot of the fresh food companies spend a lot of money in customer acquisition with all the commercials we're all seeing. It's been great for our stores and great for our freeze drying company, because, we all know what the customer acquisition costs are that are associated with the advertising spend they have. And it's helping everyone else. We're riding the coattails.
Yeah, totally. Where do you see I think what we probably didn't crack yet as an industry is the educational part, right? Already with kibble, that was a challenge. because there was kibble is not kibble, so that was a challenge. So where do you think this is going in the future?
Well, I think, one of the things that didn't exist in the age of, the more premium kibbles coming to market is social media.
Yeah.
And, just the ease at which you can communicate with, direct to the consumer. And I think that's a trend too, is we're seeing manufacturers going, creating their own brands and going direct to consumer and bypassing distribution channels.
Yes.
And that's new too. I'm not sure how long the idea of the fresh food by mail is going to last, because most of the cost of that food is advertising and shipping.
And shipping, yeah, expensive. Yeah, the whole logistic chain is a real challenge. Absolutely. So, in the times of AI, I'm often asking myself, is there a way how will AI, or does it already influence the choices of the consumer? Right? You were talking about a consumer 2.0. Before we saw trends, like freeze dry, and it came up through, somebody like you who started small and then people adapted. And that was a very organic or very natural way to grow into a trend. In your opinion, how does AI influence that in the future?
Well, we're already seeing, and we just last year we created a category on our CRM, our client relationship management software, where we're tracking, we put ChatGPT or AI search chat boxes as a referral source. And what we found in the last 12 months, again, it's only 12 months, but 1 out of 5 or so find us through a ChatGPT or a Grok search. And that's really amazing to me. So I think, we've really focused on calibrating all of our online resources to kind of sync with the way ChatGPT and the other AI platforms crawl the internet looking for information, which is different than, those standard searches coming, from Google and the legacy search engines. And then we see, we can dump data into AI right now for manufacturing. All of our current, we have 10 years of data from our current customers, and
yes,
we can really upload that into the system and start just asking simple questions, things that were, pretty difficult. You needed to have a SQL database and be able to do all these different queries, and you didn't really know, if the statistics or the algorithm you're using work. But now it's like, hey, use this type of statistics or algorithm to do this analysis. It's a game changer, and I can't imagine any companies that are trying to scale at least not being aware of the capabilities.
Yeah, agreed. The question for me is, how will our industry scale and how will they use it? Right? There are very diverse approaches. I also, during the summit, I got a lot of insights of people. It's very interesting because there really is no right or wrong. We're in this very, beginning of this journey. And I think, as you said, the first thing probably to use is really consumer insights and building on those.
Absolutely. And, all the conferences and all the information we're getting from the brands we work with is they're using those, and they're able to use it for really specific consumer targeting. We know by zip code almost anywhere in the country of where there's raw feeders.
Amazing.
It's like, don't waste your time in that zip code. Or maybe there's opportunities in that zip code, because
I was just going to say, right? So do you use it for your current business already?
We've been using some tools that, it's funny because we've been using tools for a really long time, and all of a sudden they're calling these tools we used 10 years ago AI.
Okay. So what you're saying, you always had consumer insights and you were always acting on them.
Before we opened our first store, we bought a lot of data. We downloaded a lot of data, and it helped determine where we were going to put our pet stores right from the beginning. And that was, in 2014, 2015.
Right. So if I read you right, and I think that's something completely down my alley, I always tell my customers, do not look for perfection, look for momentum. And you're a guy who does that, right? You and your wife seem to be these people who are just went, okay, here's momentum, let's go and run with it, correct?
Well, absolutely. And someone I did a presentation on entrepreneurship a year ago, and they said, the difference between you is you do the things that most people only think about.
Oh, isn't that the truth? Absolutely. And there's another element to this, I think. It's about, there is no certainty. All you need is clarity. Clarity
Right.
in that moment to act upon that, what you're clear on in that moment, because what's certain in today's world, right? If you see how quickly things are evolving, I don't think there is something like true certainty out there. Or how do you look?
Oh, absolutely not. And, one of the things, everyone worries about is some of the big box stores opening up in your backyard. And it literally happened to us 3 months after we opened our first store.
Oh.
A pet supply chain store opened up in the just 2 blocks from us.
Yeah.
And it took us 5 years, but we outperformed them.
How do you do that?
With customer service. And I always joke about this. I said they carried a lot of the same SKUs and products that we carried.
Yeah.
And really, I mean, the big difference is our employees, and we didn't have a lot of employees at the time, but they're required to look up on their phone when someone walks in the store.
Really?
We engage every single person. I try not to be annoying, but first thing we say, hi, my name is Sean, welcome to What's in the Bowl. And we engage and we talk to them and say, if you have any questions, just shout. And, we really pay attention to their behavior. And, if they don't find what they're looking for, we have a conversation.
It's an interesting question, that, John, because I think one of the big questions in today's world is, and if you look at it, the city centers, etc., a lot of retailers are closing down because everybody says, oh, it's all e-commerce now. And whilst I'm totally in agreement that there's lots of e-commerce and it's definitely relevant for the consumer 2.0 or 3.0 even, there is definitely a right and a space for independent retail, correct?
Absolutely. And I mean, to that point, during COVID, now we had an online store and we were delivering locally, back in 2016. So we were well prepared for COVID. But it wasn't until COVID that we discovered we were losing money on every single delivery. Unlike some of the other stores who had to spool up a online store, we shut ours down.
Wow.
And that's because what we found is people were just ordering food, and that's our lowest margin product. And they were never buying anything else in the store. They weren't ordering anything else in the store. And when we did that, I would say of those that were buying online regularly from us, we retain 90% plus of the folks that were ordering online, and they're coming into the store now.
And why do they do that? Why do they come into the store?
I think it started out the quality of the products, and I think people's, were disappointed that we weren't delivering anymore, but they wanted the products, they wanted a consultation. All of our customers that were ordering online from us and receiving delivery, we met in the store. They got to know us in the store. And one of the things we like about, especially the fresh food, is instead of coming in once a month for canned food or whole food, they're there a couple times a month.
Yeah, so that kind of speaks for that. I totally get that. It's also, I think, in our industry, at least in my experience, a pet is like a person, right? It's a family. It's a part of the family. So people love to talk about their pet, and then often in the big stores, there's a way to do that.
No, and I tell, when we train all of our employees, I was like, regardless of what you think you may have or may not have in common with the person coming through the door, you're going to be able to join with them on their love for their pet. And every single dog or cat that comes into the store, we believe that is the most beautiful, wonderful animal in the universe. Yes. And that's because that's what the pet parent believes.
Absolutely. So what is your clarity? I mean, what is your visionary clarity? Where is this journey going? Or what's your next strike?
So, our what's driven us from the beginning, I always say to people, is like, even if we were to somehow find the worst physician on the planet that worst physician would tell everyone we know to eat more real whole foods and less processed foods.
True.
And I think that is the future for pets, and it makes even more sense for cats and dogs. I don't think most pet parents understand the magnitude of the processing that goes behind most pet foods.
True.
And most ingredients are more chemistry derived than whole foods. So I think it's kind of back to the future. Where I think people are kind of reverting back to just eating real foods, and I think their pets are a good example. Everyone somehow, once they think about it even a little bit, it comes with perfect clarity. So we have
point.
Yeah, and we want to build communities of people that believe that.
Yes, and you can see that. I think often the humanization of the pet, it follows the human, right? I think there's a lot of suddenly I see that, at least in the US, there's lots of clarity around what's healthy, what's not so healthy. We had the whole food coloring discussion in the USA. So there's lots of things going on now, which in Europe has already happened.
Right.
The transfer to the pet is not so far away, and that kind of totally substantiates the point you're making here. So basically saying, okay, the awareness of what am I actually feeding this animal is really is becoming very high. Right.
And if you look at some of the really bad foods out there, I have 3 daughters, and when they were pregnant, I was like, there's substances in those foods they probably shouldn't even hold in the palm of their hand, and that they're feeding it to pets. So it's and we try not to villainize any particular brand or anything, but I think we have to question the food that we buy in the grocery store for ourselves.
We do.
And we have to question it even more for our pets. So we're very, very passionate about building a community of people that have that awareness, and it's not difficult to do.
No, it's not. The question for me, and we had it at the beginning before we came into this conversation, but basically, where do you see education coming in, and can that be facilitated by digitalization?
I think it is. I mean, I think today the buyer journey is very different, and I think if you're a pet store, or if you're a brand in this industry, you have to make that buyer journey aware or available, because I think for buying decisions, maybe 80-90% of that buying decision is going to happen before you're even able to pitch to them. I think a lot of people come into our store because of the products we carry. They've already done their research, and there's a lot of I would say debate on whether the brand, how much the brand should be doing to sell their products. And I was like, I think the brands and the stores together need to work closer, because I think we carry a lot of really amazing premium brands in our stores. And a lot of times those store locators, or they've the consumers decided this is the brand that I'm interested in. Do they always lead with that brand? No, because sometimes we have something that better suits their needs that they didn't discover. But I think that the buyer journey online is so important. And I was like, you really need to be on every single platform, because you never know where someone is getting their information, and it has to be consistent and the same. And it's not that difficult to do today, but if you're not doing it, you're not going to meet them on that path of their journey.
Absolutely. What is your vision for the future in this industry, Sean? What's your vision? Where's this going? Or what's your next venture? Do you see new tendencies? Tell me.
So, I mean, I'm really pleased with the recent commercials we're seeing for fresh food online, and it's the best thing that's ever happened. So, especially because we're not paying for it, right? But it's really changing the pet parent or consumer behavior, realizing that what's really good is behind a refrigerated door. And I think the momentum that's creating, and a lot of times people will say, wow, my dog is doing so much better on these foods, but it's so expensive. And when they come into our stores, we say, hey, how would you like something cheaper and way better? And so that's the amazing thing is I think we're creating this awareness right now. And I think the fresh and real food category is going to grow. I think freeze dried, a lot of people are saying, oh, freeze dried stuff is a commodity. I don't even think we've scratched the surface of the beginning of where freeze dried is going to take us on both the human and the pet side.
Yeah,
So,
I would agree with that. And you were a specialist in the freeze dried part, right? So that's another thing. It really didn't hit the shelves everywhere at the same level, I think. Do you think that's related to the cost?
I think it's somewhat related to the cost. I think it's an education issue.
Yeah.
I mean, even some veterans in this industry still ask us, why would you feed a freeze-dried food? And I was like, well, you're going to look at maybe less than 3 or 5% nutritional loss on a shelf-stable product. It is more expensive, but we're looking at probably $35 billion industry right now. So it's not anything to shake a stick at. What we are seeing in the freeze drying industry that's a little concerning is a lot of those products that we all are very critical of are, the purists and whole food people are. It's like, well, you can freeze dry almost any type of protein, even though it was scraped off the floor somewhere, or it was spoiled, or it was rendered product. And I think that's hard for consumers to discern between, is this a freeze, all freeze dried products are not super high quality. They're just shelf stable. And I always wonder why you would want to freeze dry something of that quality, because freeze drying is pretty expensive.
It is expensive, exactly. So you better use a premium first product to do it, right? Exactly.
Yeah. And the pricing part of it is, and we work with a lot of different brands, and some of them will struggle saying, it's so expensive and that's the barrier to selling it. And I was like, not really, because a lot of times in a retail location or even online, your freeze dried product's going to be the smallest package at the highest price, no matter what. And you don't want to be in a race to the bottom for pricing. You're not competing. Don't compete with these other categories. And I always say the consumer, the 2.0 pet parent, or even for human food, what we found is if they're going to buy freeze dried beef liver, if it's $15 on the shelf or $20 on the shelf, that particular consumer is going to buy it either way. No matter
what.
They're buying it.
Makes sense, Sean. Now, to come to a conclusion, time flies. Tell me quickly, what is your wish for this industry?
I think just having clarity and a clear buyer's journey. I think, years ago I read, the book, The Paradox of Choice. And I think we really get overwhelmed with all the choices that are out there and try and make a decision, and it really paralyzes consumers. And I think one of the things that we've seen in the last years is sometimes there's groups that are against raw feeding, and there's groups that are against the fresh food movement, and that's understandable, the conflict or the criticism between categories. But some of the more vile debates are within that fresh food industry or the real industry, and we need to stop it. So everybody in the fresh food industry or the freeze dried industry, we need to stop criticizing each other. It's like, we heard about the Coca-Cola wars, right? Coke and Pepsi. But they never said that Coca-Cola or Pepsi was bad for you. Or
absolutely,
it was all about taste and preference. It was never, this isn't good for you, or we're better, or anything like that. So,
which would actually have been the truth, right? Because Coca-Cola and Pepsi is not very healthy for you. But yes, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So collaboration is something you are basically pointing out, and this is also one of the reasons why I initiated this Pet Industry Rising Summit. So Sean, I'm so sorry, we have to come to an end. I thank you so much for your time. You're amazing, and I wish you good luck. Cannot wait for your next entrepreneurial journey, and all the best to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time today.